Ladies and gentlemen, for our final keynote speaker, it is my pleasure to introduce to you retired General Keith Alexander. As CEO and president of IronNet Cybersecurity, he provides strategic vision to the corporate leaders on cybersecurity issues through the development of cutting-edge technology, consulting, education, and training. He is reinventing how industries mitigate cybersecurity threats with Iron Defense, a patent solution designed to detect and alert on anomalous enterprise network behaviors through fine-tuned analytics. His goal is to bridge the communication systems between private and government sectors, to create the next level of intelligence sharing, and to protect the nation against cyber threats on global stage. General Alexander's 40-year military career culminated in his appointment as the director of the National Security Agency and chief of the Central Security Service. While serving as the NSA director, he was appointed by Congress as the first commanding general of U.S. Cyber Command, establishing and defending how our nation is protected against cyber attacks. In his role, General Alexander was responsible for planning, coordinating, and conducting operations and defending Department of Defense computer networks, as well as the defense of the nation from cyber threats. As the director of NSA, he was responsible for the national foreign intelligence requirements, military combat support, and the protection of U.S. national security information systems. Prior to leading Cyber Command and the National Security Agency, General Alexander served as the Deputy Chief of Staff Intelligence, Department of the Army, Commanding General for the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, the Director of Intelligence, United States Central Command, MacDill Air Force Base, and the Deputy Director for Requirements, Capabilities, Assessments, and Doctrine, J2, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Serving as a member of the President's Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity, General Alexander developed key recommendations to create a defensible national cyber architecture to protect national security by promoting rapid innovation and close public-private collaboration while preserving privacy and civil liberties. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage General Keith Alexander.
Honor and privilege to be here. First, I see some of my classmates here from the class of 2018. Thanks for what you're doing, but more importantly, what about that football team, huh? Isn't that great? Yeah, give them a big hand. Woo-hoo. Yeah. I was thinking about, I've been 40 years speaking, and this is the first time I can really say that on stage here and say, thanks, great work. I would never have believed that they'd shut out Air Force, who has scored in 306 games. It's amazing. It was incredible. So great job. You guys hopefully got a week off. Well, of course, the firsties did, but the plebes too. All right, great. For the next 3 hours, what I'm going to do, for anybody that's left, I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on cyber conflict and walk you through, I think, where this is going and what that means. And, it really is great that you have some of the cadets here. Because from my perspective, and midshipmen, who are coming up soon, and probably some of the Air Force folks here. I saw a couple. For all of you, you're the future. What you all represent. It's interesting that we're in a tipping point about conflict, cyber, where this goes. Just think about the advances in technology. If you think about in the 10 years, for some of you that might seem like a long time, but since 2007, that's when the iPhone came out. Today, the amount of unique information that's going to be created is more than the last 5,000 years combined, right? When you think about how quickly technology is changing, how fleeting it is, 30% of what we know this year in technology will be outdated next year, right? And the top 10 in-demand jobs this year didn't exist 10 years ago. iPhone apps developers. If you go back to 2010, there were 170,000 applications on the iPhone and Google apps. Today there's 5 million. That's about a 29-fold increase in 7 years. Think about this rate of change. For those of you in school, those of you who are freshmen or plebes, you know, half of what you learned by your junior year will be outdated. In fact, we're training kids in school for technology that doesn't exist, jobs that haven't been created, to solve problems we don't even know are problems. So it's about learning, not about knowing about technology. A huge change for how we train people. And it also changes the way we will now think about warfare. And it's really interesting because every time somebody says X is never going to happen, for General Hernandez and I, it was 1990. I volunteered. I got into 1st Armored Division. Everybody said, why are you going to an armored division? There will never be tank warfare. It's not going to happen. They're going to come out of Europe. They're going to disband. Well, I was a platoon leader in 1st Armored Division, said, that's why I want to be the G2. We said, it's a dead-end job. They should go to Southcom or something. And as you know, they were one of the divisions that went to the first Desert Storm. Everybody said you weren't going to have armored warfare. People say we're hyping the cyber threat. Look at what happened in 2007. We were talking about Estonia and what we do with the NATO center there. Well, it started in May 2007 when they were attacked by Russian hackers. 2008, Russian hackers attacked Georgia while troops went in. They hit the government, they hit banks, industry, and those were disruptive attacks. Now you go to 2008. This was for General Hernandez and I. It was Russian hackers getting into the Defense Department. That started Cyber Command. At the time, NSA, great stories. I had some folks find some sensitive information in a network where it shouldn't have been. We said, that's odd. We probably should tell them, you got a leak. And at those times, leak in the network, just make that clear for you. I know you cyber types got to get that right. Okay. And what they found out is, one, NSA was not authorized to go into DOD without somebody bringing them in. True story. So we go down there, knock on the door, said, we think you have a problem. These aren't the droids you're looking for. And they didn't let our guys in for 5 days. And they said, we don't see a problem, come on in. 24 October, Friday, 16:30, all bad things you'll find out happens at Friday afternoon to screw up your weekend. Same in the Navy. All it's going to work for you guys. And they came in, I said, sir, we got a problem. I know you're here to screw up my weekend, I know it. And they said, we found 1,500 pieces of malicious software on the DoD classified network. Being an Army officer, I was quick to grasp, that can't be good. And they said, that's why you're the director. You picked right up on that. We're proud of you, sir. And then I called Secretary Gates. I called Admiral Mullen, who was the chairman at the time, and I told him about the problem. And then I turned around to these 5 guys, not the hamburger ones, but that's a joke. I'll work on it. These 5 guys from Information Assurance, and I said, okay, we found the problem. What are we going to do to help solve it? And what they did is they came up with the idea of what they could do to solve it, the encryption, decryption, all the things that they needed to do, build a system, put that together. And as a general officer, what you'll find out is your job is to come up with the timelines. Of course, I have this nifty little saying, nothing is too hard to do. You know, remember this, right? For those of us who don't have to do it. I said, how hard could this be? And we agreed it wasn't that hard. Well, actually, it was hard. 22 hours later, they had that system up and running. and it solved the problem that Saturday. Nobody else in the world could have done it. So Monday morning when they came in, what General Hernandez and I found out is that people were going to start doing one thing. They're going to count their systems. No, this was a breach. It wasn't somebody coming in and stealing equipment. It breached it. But the services would go and count the systems for the next few weeks. There's another corollary to mine that I found out that Secretary Gates had. His corollary was no good deed goes unpunished. He called me up 11 November and said, guess what? You've been running the offense. You get the defense, too, also. No raise in pay. You get both jobs. Do them the same. We're going to save some money here. So Joint Task Force Global Network Ops on 11 November is chopped to me. Great guys. But you could see the difference in the way the offense looks at a problem and the way the defense looks at a problem. Offense is cleared top secret SCI. Defense was cleared to secret. Does that make sense to anybody here? No, hell no. And not only that, so then you go and you say, so what happened? And you figure out how we're set up. And you find out we got a problem. And we did, and we still do. Fast forward, 2012. We had sanctioned Iran in energy sector and finance over a number of different deals, including the nuclear, terrorism, and other things. Iran conducted a series of attacks, first against Saudi Aramco, destroying the data on over 30,000 systems. And then a few days later, after about August 15th, started attacking the US financial sector in response to those sanctions. And what you see from 2007 to 2012 to today, cyber has become an element of national power. An element of national power. And I think what the senator brought out, President Obama put out, that we'll respond to acts in cyber using the full spectrum of our authorities to include cyber and any others. But there's a problem. We're not ready. And so I'm going to talk a little bit what I mean, what do we need to do to get ready? Because many of you folks from the Navy, Army, Air Force, and other schools are the ones that are going to end up fighting this fight. And I think it's going to happen. I think we are going to be tested in cyber, and I don't think we're ready. So let me describe what the problem is from my perspective. You see nation states using cyber as an element of national power. You see them throwing tests over. And let's say hypothetically that we sanction a few countries like North Korea or Iran or Russia. Oh, we got all three. How do they come back on us? Cyber, and in Iran's case, cyber and terrorism. And if you think about it, it's really interesting. I had the slides created. It's really good. We still create PowerPoint briefings. You know, we got to do that kind of. That's the gift to industry, my gift to them. And I was on the Presidential Commission, and there was this argument over what's the role and who's responsible for defending the nation. And at that time, some in the Defense Department would say, your job is to defend the DOD. And I said, well, if my job is to defend the DOD, why don't we just get rid of it? That solves both problems. Or better yet, how about we defend the nation? They said, no, General, you need to. So nice part about being a four-star general is you can say, okay, I don't agree with you, I'll talk to the secretary. So Secretary then Panetta, who's a great guy, I said, I'm going to give you a story, Mr. Secretary, and here's the way it goes. There's a missile coming into Denver. We look at it and say, is it going to hit a military installation? Nope, let it go. We're okay. Now there's a cyber attack against the financial sector. We look, we ain't got no money. let it go. And then the next day, what's going to happen? You and I are going to be in front of that committee that includes Senator Angus King and others, and they're going to say, what the heck happened? I'm going to say, my job was to protect the military. We're good. We don't have any money. We still don't have any money. We're good. Over to you, Mr. Secretary. And they're going to roast you. And he said, no, your job is to defend the nation. And it's interesting. I use that on the Presidential Commission. If you look at the Constitution, the preamble, what was this government created for? The common defense. We don't do that in cyber. There is no common defense. Every company's on their own. Every government agency's on their own. And the only thing we do in common is incident response. And if you've been hacked, coming in and having the government tell you you've been hacked kind of goes like this. Let's pretend we're Equifax. You can be the CEO of Equifax up for a few more minutes. We come in and say, you've been hacked. You go, I know. You lost a lot of data. Yeah, I know. Probably should have done better. Yeah, I know. Probably going to lose your job. I know. Are we helping you yet? Anything else you need? Yeah. All right. Well, good luck. It's tough being you. Sorry, I know you wanted to be better than that, but when you think about it, why do we do that? Incident response. We don't need incident response. You talk to industry, the question is, where's the defense of our country? I'll give you another part. You look at critical infrastructure. Company A, Company B, Company C, D, E. I'll bring in the Ukraine here and everybody. I was just there that's a nice poster. I was there. Now, think about these 5 companies. You protect your network. Events hit it, you protect it, you fight on your own. You fight yours, you fight yours, you fight yours, you fight yours. And occasionally, you'll look at data and say, yeah, this is really important. I probably should share it with the rest of industry. I'll put it on a form. I'll send it over. We'll share this piece of information. And I'll make sure that it doesn't reflect poorly on me. So maybe I should send it to my general counsel, make sure it's okay, get it all eased out, and 3 weeks later, my closest friends have it, and 6 months later, the rest of you will get it. That's today's sharing. Let's now move forward to the airline industry. Some of you flew here. Imagine that the radars that we have across our country are sharing information by emails, subject to the question of, this is an interesting flight coming up. Looks like a United flight, 360 going to LA. Do you think we should share that with the next radar operator? Probably should send them an email. We'll call that real-time, electronic connection. Send them that data. First, let me make sure that it doesn't reflect poorly on me. Is he really at 36? And then we send it to him, hope he reads it. We don't do an air picture like that, right? Why do we do a cyber picture like this? Why do we individually defend in cyber? And it is really interesting to think back. No, I was not there in 1776, but to think back at the start of our country. We built this country on a common defense strategy. That's how it started. I'm not talking about sharing personally identifiable information. I'm talking about sharing threat information. We can and we should do that. Now, let's say we take this group that reflects one industry and we share electronically at network speed those things that deal with attacks on your sector. And if we can share it with the sector, we can share it with other sectors and with the government. Because the only way the government can defend you is they have to see it, not after the fact, but before anything bad happens at the recon phase. And so it's going to take a while for people to understand that concept. But for you and you guys, that's what you're going to have to wrestle with getting right. Because when you go on active duty, what it really means is how do we execute the fundamental mission of defending this country? How do you do that? And if you can't see it, you're not going to defend it. So why am I focused on that? Because I believe we are going to be tested in this space. And we can do probability curves and all that, but you think about Iran and Russia and North Korea, I think we're going to see some of them act against us. Whether it's what's been happening on the election side or collateral damage, which we've seen from attacks on the Ukraine into our infrastructure, or attacks like what happened in 2012. When countries have a disagreement with ours and they believe they can attack us without attribution, we're going to see attacks. And that's where we are today. So, what do we need to do to fix that? I think what Cyber Command has started to set up and what we did in terms of setting up the teams, the offensive teams, the defensive teams, and training is really good. So we have a cyber force that's being built. We have allies. We don't have the ability to see what's going to happen to our critical infrastructure. And quite frankly, if you want to hurt this country, it's not attacking the Defense Department per se in cyber. It's not attacking another government agency, although I think they will do that too. It's actually going after parts of our critical infrastructure that can be focused regionally, like the energy sector, regional banks, healthcare, and do us damage. Now, I think there's tremendous room for miscalculation in that, but I believe that's one of the greater probabilities of conflict that we will see. So, what do we need to get right? First, we've got to ensure, and this was one of the findings in the Presidential Commission, that the Defense Department understands its roles and responsibilities in defending the nation, DHS, its roles in protecting the nation. Think of this as incident response, setting up the right framework. FBI, DOJ, and the intel community. Everybody has those lanes in the roads down, part one. Two, we set up that relationship where we can share with industry. That means we have to build up industry to actually see that data and send it. And three, we have to have rules of engagement. Cyber attacks aren't one. You know, it's kind of interesting. I was talking to Chairman Mullen, who is a great guy. And we were talking, he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a cyber exercise. Day one, we're going to have this attack start. What we want you to do is create a briefing and tell us on day two what you would do. And I said, you know, in cyber, it starts on day one and probably ends 20 minutes later. So my briefing was really going to be about what we should have done, not what we're going to do. Because what you need to have is, what are you going to authorize our offensive team to do to defend the country? What are those rules of engagement? What are the limitations? And does the commander of U.S. Cyber Command and potentially others understand what those rules are? We have to get that right, and they have to go out. Finally, and most importantly, we have to practice government with government, so how Cyber Command, NSA, and others can defend our country and the rest of government. And we have to practice working that with industry. And we need to get on with it. That's the first start. That sets up how we can do this nationally. And of course, most of our industry is international. So we have to have a framework that we can do nationally and that we can support internationally and explain how we're doing it and what we're doing, the limits, the value, who our partners are, and how we do this. So NATO and some of those actually have great meaning. I would close on the following sets of things. You know, it was really interesting. For those of you who know me, I actually have learned to read. That's a joke. And I actually got the Wall Street Journal out the other day. Sorry. But it was I was looking at a video on it, actually, and it was esports, right? I don't know if you've seen esports. So I was with one of the owners of some of the conventional teams, like the Caps, the Wizards, and others, and we were talking about the sports teams he has, and he goes, well, you know, the biggest change coming is esports. I said, esports, what's that? He said, well, we just invested in a team called Team Liquid that won the Nationals. And da-da-da-da-da, Team Liquid, you know, all these are hacker guys that play these games, right? If you go back to yesterday's Wall Street Journal, there's a thing on esports. Turn it on. In about 20 minutes, they sold out tickets to Madison Square Gardens and to another for tens of thousands of people to watch these esports games. I bring that up because that's your future. That's where this is going. When you think about the role of cyber and these gaming technologies and what this means for our future, that's our future. That's where we're going. That's where our class is going. And when you think about that, it's the future. It's data. It's about the fighting over data. And so as you start to look at it, there are some tremendous opportunities. You know, I'll give you one case in point. And I've been asked this question, not by Senator Heinrich or others, but should we outlaw the internet? Probably not. Probably not a good thing, especially for a political candidate to say that. But I've heard some say that. But the reality is the benefits for what's going on here are so great for mankind in terms of solving cancer and other things that we have to run down this road. There is no stopping it. So the question is, how will we organize to defend this country when those cyber attacks come? And we've got to do that. We will be tested. It's part of the future. So, for the Army Cyber Institute and what they've done here, great work. Really great. I think this is a huge opportunity for the services each to push out where we're going, what and how this is important, to talk about the future of cyber conflict. And we've really got to do that. And I know the chief came in yesterday and gave you great support, well-earned and well-deserved. For those of you in school, hopefully that will graduate here in the not-too-distant future, some of you, you're that future. Thanks for what you're doing. You know, you have a great opportunity. It's going to be an amazing ride. It really is. Thank you very much, folks. Thanks for all that you do. If you make them easy. Easy question.
General Alexander said he'll entertain some questions as long as they're easy, so I would challenge him.
And I'll
Who
define
wants to
easy
be the
when you
first
ask.
challenger? Over here.
Thank you, General. Thank you very much for your inspiring words. My name is Merle Magra. I'm the head of the NATO Cyber Center in Estonia. And from the part of the center, as well as an Estonian, I want to really thank you for your leadership and everything you've done to our country and the region more generally. I had a question too. I wanted to ask some of the problems you reflected here at a national level, whether you could give a short insight into what is missing there at international level in this area, and if the US is to practice its leadership at an international level, what is missing for you to do it together with the other allies? What's the value and what's missing there? Thank you.
So this is an area that will quickly form alliances along what we do with NATO. So I think what you're doing with the Cyber Center there in Estonia is a great great step forward. First of all, ideally, every country would work together in cyber. But that's not realistic. There are those who are going to say they're going to work together, but are using it for bad things. So what that ends up is you're going to have circles of trust and confidence. And you want to share threat information and things that are bad with everybody, but you don't want to give up what adversaries may be doing to your network to determine vulnerabilities. So you've got to be wise about how to do that. So I think you'll have national level information. So think of that as what, from our perspective, our government will have as classified information. And then they will have that they share with their allies, with NATO, and then they share with all countries. So if you think about that, I think it'll go that way. I believe we have an opportunity to lead in this area. And I think we have a responsibility to lead in this area. And that, and actually President Ilves did a great job. Okay, a little war story about President Ilves, true story. So I went to Estonia a couple times, and so I invited him to my house on Fort Meade. And so he came over, we had a few beers, all appropriate, not a lot, just a couple. And we talked about cyber, and we brought in folks, and it was great. So I got out, and he contacted me and said, hey, I'm coming in. I said, why don't you come into my house? Now, I'm now on the economy, or in a civilian house. They made me move off Fort Meade after I retired. And so I didn't think about the fact that president of a country coming to you. So the Secret Service guys come and say, yeah, we're going to come, and they knew me, and they said, yeah, no problem, we got this covered. I didn't think about anything beyond that. The next day when he comes, there's 3 police cars, 2 black sedans. These agents get out and cover the 4 corners of our property. And of course, we're pretty new in the neighborhood. They think, drug bust. And the neighbors are all texting my wife, what's going on? I was going to say, yeah, they caught her with drugs or something. But it was kind of funny. We laughed that up. What an honor and privilege it was to work with him. I know he's out at Stanford now. I've been in contact with him since. And those kind of partnerships, I think, are important and ones that we ought to continue to pursue. How can we help? Well, that's where I think you all, our servicemen and women, our industry leaders, our game leaders, can get together and come up with a strategy that we can apply here to protect this country and share with our allies. And that's what we should do. Other questions? 2.
Yes. Hello. Thank you, General, by the way. I'm an independent journalist, but I sometimes work with the Washington Post and The Nation and others. My name's Brandon Smith. In 2014, Charlie Savage reported that NSA uses upstream 702 surveillance against state-sponsored hackers, like the recently revealed Advanced Persistent Threat 28 and 29. Given that that's the case, why didn't the intelligence community use 702 to prevent the hack of the DNC?
Well, I'm not familiar with both of those, so beats me. I retired in 2014, as you may know, so I have no real good insights into either of those. And I'll tell you this. I spent almost 9 years at NSA. These were some of the best military and civilian folks I have ever worked with, period. Do they do the right thing? You betcha. The issue comes down to authorities and responsibility, and what do you allow them to do? You've highlighted the risk that I see with industry with the Democratic National Convention. That is, if you don't see it, you're not going to stop it. So my intuition would say that's what it is, but I have no insight to that because I was retired before that occurred. But make no mistake, the people, men and women of NSA, both military and civilian, were superb at what they did every day. And working with the military, both Army, Navy, I include you guys, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, was the greatest honor of my life. These are really good people that, by and large, do the right thing, period. Okay, Next question. Okay, no, oh, over here. One.
So I made it out to DEF CON earlier this year. I know you went a few years back. It was kind of a momentous occasion, right? Seeing someone from government going out to a hacker convention. My question was, were you made to feel welcome in that community? And what are some ways that people from this community can reach out to that community?
Oh, well, I think, first of all, it's interesting. Those of you who saw Greg Conti here, teaches at Black Hat. I think it's a great community, and you may have seen that one of the young hackers, Cypress, I brought up on the stage. She was 12 years old and was one that found a zero-day exploit. We need to work together. The military can't do it without the help of the civilian community, the hacker community, and everything else. We need to work together for the common defense. And it's interesting, when you think about going back to the start of this country, they called it citizen soldiers. You know, the folks that fought at Lexington and Concord were citizens. So the question that you have, and I would turn back to you, is how do you help us defend this country when we get attacked? Because the parts that are coming attack isn't going to be just the military, it's our country. And what's at risk? Our way of life. And it takes all of us, and we have to work together. So I think I encourage people to go out to Black Hat, DEF CON, and other conferences like that. ShmooCon coming up. I think my company's going to actually do some of the sponsor for ShmooCon. I thought, really, is that the name of it? It is. So I think those are good things, and that's a great question, so thanks. Any other questions? Nope? Okay. Oh, two. Okay, I was not quick enough.
Sir, how do you feel about companies hacking back?
Okay. I was asked that, and I have this joke about, and it actually made the Wall Street Journal, so I got to be careful how I joke. But I'm out now, so it's okay. I didn't get fired. My CEO is a wonderful guy. I get along with him great. That's me. We see eye to eye. Split personality. Hacking back. Let's take Sony as a case in point. And let's say that we take the Army and Navy team, put you guys together that defend the academy things, and allow you to hack back for Sony. I think this group here could have wiped out North Korea. Now, here's the issue. North Korea gets hit with a counterattack that takes out part of their government complex, and those things that look like they're hacking. North Korea doesn't understand it's just a reciprocation for what they've done. They think it's an elevation. So what do? They throw artillery into Seoul. We just started, through hacking, a war that's inherently a government responsibility. So we can't do that for two reasons. One, industry might not understand who the real attacker was. So let's say if they miss and they fire on China, well, that's not good either. So that gets you back to that comment. If it's a government responsibility, then the government is responsible for defending the country. But the government can't do it if you can't see it. So we got to fix that. So great question. Thanks. Good? All right. Thanks, folks.